letras, rimas, corazón es lo que doy.
They're poor, they're broke, they're hungry.
Y que no se diga que me pinto de playboy.
Imagine not being able to say, you shouldn't be in power because such and such and such. You can't say that over there. You say anything, even remotely close, they come, take all your shit and you're gone. That's it. Lock you up.
Si el hombre no es libre, tiene que tratar de serlo de algún modo.
They make MacGyver look like shit. They can make something happen out of nothing.
What was that truck that they made the other day? They got a truck and they made it a boat.
8 de la mañana mi mamá me decía para el trabajo y me decía, recién ¿cuánto te va a dormir? Yo no, recién ahí con los tocadiscos. Yo me acostaba a las 7 de la mañana todos los días.
They work, they break their back, and they don't have nothing.
La gente en Cuba, los hombres les gusta la violencia. Son violentos. Y entonces cuando ven una mujer que es, diría yo, cruda, que no es sumisa, eso le gusta.
I don't know how I would be, man. I probably wouldn't be a rapper. I'd probably be robbing tourists or some shit. I don't know.
The industry is pretty much destroying hip-hop in the States, and a lot of the cutting-edge artists don't get the support, and so it doesn't influence the culture in a way that it needs to. Here, it's kind of like an explosion, you know, it's like just starting.
"90 miles off the coast of Florida, a new revolution is taking hold of communist Cuba. Young musicians have discovered the power of hip-hop as a means of expression. They've also discovered that Cuba has rigid boundaries when it comes to sharing your thoughts, and if you cross the line, you're denied the right to perform, or you're thrown in jail." I travel to Havana to see whether an art form based on free speech and the ability to question the establishment can flourish in a place where one man controls everything and stops at nothing to stay in power. My first stop is Casa de la Música for a look at Cuba's top group, Anónimo Consejo, which means anonymous advice. They just appeared on the cover of the first issue of Cuba's only hip-hop magazine, a publication actually sponsored by Fidel Castro's government. Only a handful of homemade Anónimo CDs circulate in Cuba, so the crowd is eager to check out a rare live performance. Outside, a mix of rappers and fans wear brand new street gear from the United States. Every year, people who fled Cuba for the States send back more than $300 million to family members who stayed behind. So a select group of young Cubans can afford to spend $75 on a pair of sneakers. For the average Cuban, though, the shoes would cost 5 months' salary. Anónimo rappers Yosmel and Coquino, the one in the yellow t-shirt, invite me to hear them rehearse the next night. I take a taxi 45 minutes outside Havana, and I have no idea what to expect. I walk down a dark passageway between cement houses, looking for the address they gave me. There's almost no light, and I nearly bump into Coquino's mother in the darkness. It's pretty clear there won't be a plush recording studio at the end of the alley. Can you picture 50 Cent or Lil Jon sharing a cramped apartment with his mom because he can't afford his own place? Coquino lives here with his parents, even though he's one of the country's most popular rappers. It's also where Anónimo Consejo rehearse, under the steely gaze of their hero, Cuban revolutionary Che Guevara. He appears tattooed on their arms and perched on the living room wall. Tonight, Coquino and Yosmel are entertaining two female rappers from Che's home country of Argentina. They've traveled 4,000 miles to hear the rhymes of Cuba's hip-hop revolution. The show begins when Coquino throws a CD in the stereo. Cuba's top rappers don't have real microphones, so they practice with a ceramic pipe and a TV remote control.
Anónimo, yo. Y tú me quieres tumbar, ¿con qué tú cuentas? Y tú me quieres enganchar, ¿con qué tú cuentas? Y tú me quieres agarrar, ¿con qué tú cuentas? Si el consejo es uno nada más.
Parece que no se da cuenta. 5-5 de mi mente pa' tu mente.
6-6 en defensa de mi gente, yo.
El mandamiento de la Sagrada Escritura.
El verdadero hip hop es nuestra cultura.
5-5 de mi mente pa' tu mente.
6-6 en defensa de mi gente, yo.
El mandamiento de la Sagrada Escritura.
El verdadero hip hop es nuestra cultura.
Primer paso, decir la verdad, nunca lo falso. Aunque te cosan la boca, aunque te arranquen a pedazos.
Segundo paso, buen trastazo, pa' tu oído raso. Mi objetivo, amigo, no es ser mejor que tú. Ser humilde es mi virtud, como Cristo Jesús. A todos ofrezco luz.
Tercero, nuestra amistad.
En todos los países existen sus reglas, pero yo creo que nosotros nunca hemos dejado de hablar lo que hemos querido. Siempre hemos hablado lo que hemos querido. Aunque tengamos la responsabilidad de que nos puede suceder.
A few years ago, Anonimo performed a song about the police harassing black Cubans. Officers tried to shut down the show and seize the rappers, but the crowd stepped in the way and would not back down. But a few days later, police spotted one of the rappers in the street and tossed him in jail overnight to teach him a lesson about criticizing Fidel or his government. The other big challenge for Cuban rappers is purely economic.
No sé, es difícil grabar un disco porque la disquera cubana piensan que no van a poder sacarle el dinero que van a invertir en tu disco porque piensan que tú no vas a vender copias. Y la otra que no hacen videos porque no promueven, no les gusta promover la verdad, las cosas de la calle. No. Una de las cosas que pasan con la música rap es que algunos grandes músicos a veces nos subestiman a nosotros, porque yo pienso que una de las mayores cosas que a ellos les molestan a los músicos es que el rap no se estudia en academia.
Negro piensa lo que es, tu materia gris no es.
El rap es una cosa que nace en la calle y es una cosa empírica, y quizás eso a ellos les choque un poco porque ellos dicen, no, mira, estos tipos lo hacen bien pero no pasaron escuela, entonces eso como que les choca.
Cuban rappers see money as necessary, but also as a threat to black culture, something they say is corrupting the U.S. hip-hop scene.
Antes tú escuchabas un disco en 96 de cualquier grupo de rap en Estados Unidos y tú lo podías oír completo. Ahora, ¿qué hacen ellos? Por tal de ganar dinero, el disco trae 20 temas y solo 2 sirven, que son los que venden y salen en BT, en MTV, y con esos 2 temas ellos venden ya. Pero los 18 temas que faltan son una mierda, ¿entiendes? Por eso es que yo pienso que ahora ha cambiado mucho. Las grandes disqueras han transformado el pensamiento de los negros de Estados Unidos.
After the interview, Coquino takes me on an MTV crib-style tour. Imagine a sort of casas of the broke Cuban rappers.
Este es el patio de mi casa. La ropa de la O. Mira, yo también, la cocina, estamos a mucho reguero porque pintamos la casa. Yo también soy fanático de Iverson, básquetbol, yo player, básquetbol. Iverson, fanático de Iverson. Y Redman y Metalman. Fanático de Redman y Metalman, son mis favoritos de Estados Unidos. Básquet, hip hop, my life. Baño, the bathroom, my house. Este es mi cuarto. Anónimo consejo. Anónimo consejo. Anónimo consejo. Un día voy a llamar. Uten, my favorite. Uten, el Che Guevara. Ahí está. Black Gold. Players basketball. Basketball, hip hop, my life, my life, my life. Este es el amigo de nosotros que cantaba antes con nosotros. Ese soy yo. Esta es mi mamá.
Gracias,
Cuban salsa legend Celia Cruz sang that life is a carnival, but that's not always the case in Cuba, especially if you're a woman. They're up against the whole machismo culture, and short of a generous relative in the US, the only sure way to make real money is to sell your body, which makes the story of 3 tough lesbian rappers even more remarkable. They're called Las Crudas, the crude ones, and they're neither prostitutes nor sellouts.
Este es Donato, el hermano, y aquí estamos las crudas. Este es Pasa, este es Tania, la estamos formando de madre, y no me formes nada, no me formes foco, mira.
By day, they're street performers working for tourist dollars. But by night, they produce some of the edgiest hip-hop on the island.
Y normal, ¿qué vamos a hacer? Somos mujeres guerreras fuertes, ¿qué vamos a hacer?
Realmente nos cansamos porque es muy fuerte el trabajo en la calle. Sentíamos que había muy pocas mujeres en el movimiento, que si habían 2 o 3 estábamos separadas una cada otra ya. Y entonces hicimos canciones donde hablábamos de la necesidad de la unidad de las mujeres, donde hablábamos de la necesidad de la representación femenina real, que era muy poca. Paso a paso hemos ido logrando todo lo que en nuestras canciones hemos pedido, hemos denunciado. Que hay algún movimiento de mujeres en Cuba que se fortalece cada día. Y entonces estamos felices porque lo que al comienzo nuestras canciones podía parecer como una protesta o podía parecer algo muy fuerte, se está haciendo una realidad.
Hombres, siempre buscando poder, nosotras no. Nuestro H es ser mujer, tenemos nuestra cueva y que afuera llueva, llueva. Te lo advierto, desde ahora voy a luchar recrudeciendo poesía. Voy a seguir dándote más de la mía. Voy a esperar que me entiendas algún día. Voy a decir y tú, y tú, y tú me van a oír. Ya, ya, ya. Ya me cansé de ser la momia, mi lengua en la ceremonia.
Pa' que te enteres, haceré y sepa que en el juego jugamos las mujeres. Pa' que te enteres y no te desesperes. Mi crudeza es la que tu mente quiere.
Siempre luchando por ser incluida.
Coño.
Coge mi lírica, chequea mi medida, hago la que quiera. Existiendo natural, amante, tierna, espiritual, carnal. Y te la digo en tu cara, compadre, deja la guara, vamos a reflexionar. Es la mujer la más hermosa ser que existe sobre la tierra.
Es quien abre y es quien cierra pa' que nazcan todos los días.
Piénsalo 1000 veces, no violencia con las mías. Ni criada ni objetos sexuales. Déjate de abuso, somos seres maternales.
Maternales.
Pa' que te enteres, haceré y sepa que en el juego jugamos las mujeres. Pa' que te enteres y no te desesperes. Mi crudeza es la que tu mente quiere. Mujeres.
When top groups like Anónimo Consejo and Las Crudas can't snag a record deal, all Cuban rappers must worry about the future of hip-hop. Will they wind up on the street playing for money, like this blind man in Havana? His name is Jose Joseis, and he's quite possibly Cuba's oldest living rapper. Despite his age, it's the young Cubans who seem to really connect with his primitive sound. Of course, he doesn't worry about a record deal. He's just trying to survive. And if he can do it by performing, all the better. He's at this bus stop every day, banging out beats for spare change from the pockets of daily commuters. While most Cubans earn about 50 cents a day, Jose makes at least twice that, unless it's raining and nobody's on the street. When my friends in the United States hear I'm working on a documentary about Cuban musicians, they always mention the film Buena Vista Social Club and its romantic portrait of Cuba. But for thousands of Cuban musicians, reality paints a far grittier picture. Travel beyond the postcard-friendly tourist spots, and you'll experience the underbelly of modern-day Cuba. Just a few blocks from the capital, I find a frenzied crowd training young terriers to fight. A few blocks further, a harsh reminder of the countless Cubans without running water. All night long, they show up at fire hydrants like this one. Across town, it's more primitive, but even busier. They use chunks of wood as stoppers. hydrant still leaks, and it's caked with dirt and rust. But the entire neighborhood has quick access to drinking water.
Revoluciones tras revoluciones.
Ever since the Soviet Union collapsed 15 years ago, Cuba has been struggling. Billions of dollars in future Soviet aid vanished overnight, ending the long, lucrative relationship Fidel had with the Soviets dating back to Khrushchev. About the same time, the United States squeezed its economic embargo of Cuba even tighter. As this billboard in Havana shows, Cuba used the occasion to further label the U.S. an imperialist bully. But the damage was done. Something had to give. So Fidel began what he called a special period. Food, electricity, and gasoline were in short supply, so everything was rationed, just as it is to this day. Suddenly, many farmers returned to plowing their fields with oxen, as their tractors sat idle with empty gas tanks. The bicycle became the preferred mode of transportation for millions of Cubans. And if you were lucky enough to own a motorcycle and the means to buy gas, you basically turned it into a minivan. Perhaps the biggest change dealt with money and how you make it. For years, the only currency Cubans could possess was the peso. If they were caught with American money, even the old-timers could spend 5 years in jail. But all of a sudden, Cuba's economy was in a tailspin, so Fidel made dollars legal. Cuba's legitimate economy now had access to millions of dollars circulating in the black market. Street capitalism took hold of communist Cuba. Walk through Havana, and you'll see it everywhere. If Cubans have the money, they can buy CDs of all the latest US music, which sells in pirated form on the streets. Eminem, Ja Rule, DMX, Beyonce, all for $2 a pop. I ran into one guy who makes his money refilling disposable lighters. Actual lighter fluid is hard to come by with the embargo in place. So he uses giant cans of roach killer, which he's outfitted with a special nozzle. And the capitalism doesn't stop there. Cubans are allowed to open restaurants in their homes if they share the profits with Fidel. They're called paladares, and they offer some of the best food on the island. And for about $20 a night, Cubans will also rent you a room in their house. But for the privilege, they pay Fidel's government a hefty fee. The dirty little secret of communist Cuba is that capitalism allows it to survive. Cubans sell anything, whether it's an old-time photo on the Capitol steps, a meal in their home, Cuban cigars smuggled out of the factory, or in the case of many women, their bodies. They're called jiniteras, which means jockeys, and they find plenty of business separating horny tourists from their cash. I even hear various stories of a love-hungry tourist showing up and falling in love with a Cuban woman. He lavishes her with gifts and abundant food, and by the end of his trip, proposes to her. She accepts, but says it might be a while before she can leave the island. But in the meantime, could he send money every month? He does, not knowing she already has a Cuban husband who knows about the whole charade. I hear of Cuban men doing the same drill with female tourists. You marry a tourist for money, they tell me, but you marry a Cuban for love.
I'm in a cab heading to Olimar, the birthplace of Cuban rap. It's a sprawling Soviet-era housing project, the largest one in all of Cuba. They say most of the apartments were built back in the 70s to house Soviet workers. Those workers are all gone, but the Cubans still call this place Siberia.
Un, dos, tres, dos, tres, dos, tres.
Come on!
I'm on a rooftop in Alamar, one of the old concrete apartment buildings, and antennas like this one, which is rigged up with chicken wire, are one of the main reasons that the whole movement began here. Alamar is a little bit higher than most of the cities for miles and miles around. And when you put an antenna like this one on top of one of these very tall apartment buildings, it can pick up radio signals as far away as Miami. Back in the 80s, a lot of the young kids here started to hear hip-hop being broadcast from Miami. They hear it for the very first time, they listen to it, they imitate it, and then they make it their own. And that's how the whole movement began.
Extraños son los pensamientos que actualmente por mi mente pasan. Me incomodan los cinismos, pero me enorgullece mi raza. Poder estar en el pueblo, el talento está en las masas. Si hace lo que se puede, o qué coño, o qué pasa.
10 years ago, the rappers started a hip-hop festival here, and they eventually started performing in a massive empty swimming pool the size of a city block. The pool once embodied the seduction of socialism. They called it the Giant Pool, and it was so big that nobody had to worry about missing the party. Then the Soviet Union crashed, and Fidel's government drained the pool and locked the gate. Out of the rubble, the festival electrified the underground hip-hop movement. Building the careers of Cuba's hottest rappers was Pablo Herrera, a producer the Washington Post called the Cuban Dr. Dre.
So I'm gonna have somebody rhyming on this, and then it's gonna end into like a rock and roll.
Pablo speaks fluent English, as well as Russian, and was a linguistics professor at the University of Havana before reading about hip-hop in Rolling Stone magazine and making a career change to hip-hop producer. He lives in Havana's Santo Suarez neighborhood and works out of a second-floor apartment that's jammed with a mixed bag of audio equipment, including a tracking booth set up in his closet. One of Pablo's first groups was Amenaza, which means threat. They broke new ground with the song Mixed Up Mulatto. For the first time, in a big way, Cuban rappers were singing about their own world, in this case, racism.
The song says, they said black, but they didn't count me among them. They said white, but they didn't accept me among them. They said so many things. I'm the person that nobody wanted. The white and the black together, the cry out of the mestizo.
Mixed Up Mulatto ignited a Cuban hip-hop career like nothing before or since.
People were so crazy about that song. They were like, oh my God, that song is like for the first time they had a song that talked about them that they could relate to, and they could dance to it.
Despite the buzz in the street, Fidel's economy was sputtering and offered Amenaza no room to grow. So they packed up and moved to France. They reformed as Orishas and signed a major record deal with Universal, and in 1999 put out the first commercially successful Cuban hip-hop album, A lo Cubano, which means the Cuban way. The album sold more than 500,000 copies and gave the world its first taste of Cuban hip-hop.
No, a los cubanos, directamente de Panam, de París para ser exacto de Cheguam, donde están los de la nueva generación. Son y mira, ponte en el fuego de la acción, con presión de la lírica, mística, psíquica. La rumba ha comenzado con Anga, Flaco Pro.
Are you ready? Let me know if you ready. Let's go.
Another hot rapper with Cuban roots who struck it big is Pitbull, but he was born in Miami. His parents grew up in Cuba and fled the island after Castro took power. Pitbull exploded on the national scene with the help of super producer Lil Jon. We tracked him down driving around the streets of Miami in a 30-foot Hummer limo, something you'd never see in Havana. We brought him an iPod full of Cuban hip-hop.
This nigga's raw. This nigga's raw. Because he's speaking the truth about hypocrisy, about same people that are trying to help him out, same people trying to shut him up. He's saying y'all can take all that commercial shit, stick it up your ass, and go to hell. But it's his wordplay though that makes it raw. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, you know what I'm saying?
Féminas no somos solo para vernos bonitas, va a seguir coro y estar calladitas. Aquí estamos las crudas con el micro en mano, representando a las primas. Oye tu hermano.
Las crudas. I think they're on the right track. Meaning like, it's funny you say like the Missy, like they're sort of like that, like they switch up the flow, they're singing in it, and what they're saying is all true. You know what I'm saying? In this game, women, you know, women are the game. That's basically what they're saying. We run the game. They're writing a song with some meaning, depth, it's deep. They got punchlines in here, you know, that'll make you think about shit. What they do with their ovaries is amazing. Imagine them on some shit like this, or with beats, you know, some real fucking production and some shit. They're so oppressed that they can't speak their mind. When they do write something down on paper, they do it so, like they describe it so in depth, there's so much double meaning to it. It's like poetry, really. You know, because everybody knows the truth over there, they just can't speak the truth over there. When you hear their music, it has so much more to it than just being a beat and somebody rapping. They could be the nicest rapper or whatever the fuck. I don't mean a goddamn thing. Unless Castro sees he can capitalize off it. He can capitalize off, believe me, he'll find a way. What we're doing over here is trying to cater to the masses in order to sell records. Over there, they're just doing it because they love it. Ain't nobody making no fucking money in Cuba. They don't have a way to get their music out. They're doing this for the love. They're not doing it because they're getting paid for this shit. Ain't gonna get nothing. These people do this because they love this shit. They done fell in love with hip-hop, just like I fell in love with hip-hop. My advantage is I'm able to actually have an opportunity to feed my family off this shit. Better myself, better my community, better my people. Open doors for my people. You know, who's really buying these records? Cuban people are poor. You know, you're not really making no money over there, so they're doing it because they love it, you know? They love it so much, they make it their culture, you know? The true hip-hop is our culture. It's crazy. What's the next one?
As the Orishas and Pitbull tasted success on the world stage, back in Cuba, hundreds of inspired hip-hop groups began forming. A brave few even dared to criticize Fidel.
Estamos background, on the ground. Vengo representando público aquí quemado, no. Contra revolución, no. Y representando el micrófono. Yo, hijo de papá, mi Dios. Fidel adelante, primero aquí de mayo. Y Dios mío, si digo mentira, me cae un rayo. De noche y de día. Representación de la policía. Que viene a verme a mí, agua fría.
From this vortex of creativity and anger emerged a brilliant and politically shrewd DJ named Ariel Fernandez Diaz. Ariel knew that Fidel would crush the new movement if he felt threatened. So Ariel wrote the Hip Hop Manifesto, in which he eloquently argued that Fidel's government should actually embrace these young revolutionaries. Ariel began circulating the manifesto, and remarkably, it was published in a respected state-run journal. And in 1999, Fidel's government declared hip-hop an authentic expression of Cuban culture. Fidel created the Cuban Rap Agency, which not only offered limited financial support to the new movement, but also tightly controlled public performances and who was allowed to participate. As for Ariel, he made history by becoming Cuba's first minister of hip-hop. He was now the government official in charge of this explosive movement, functioning both as government minder and defender of the artists.
Yo pienso que la generación de raperos cubanos es una generación que quiere seguir luchando, que quiere cambiar su sociedad. Somos gente que tenemos un sentido de pertenencia con el país, sentimos de que este es nuestro país, esta es nuestra patria, esta es nuestra revolución y que nos toca hacer algo, no podemos estar con los brazos cruzados.
Perhaps Ariel's greatest challenge was not to upset Fidel, a leader who once outlawed rock and roll. Ironically, Fidel was the original rebel, the original revolutionary. It's a title he's not fond of sharing. It's as if he's trademarked the term revolution. Under Fidel's definition, there's only one revolution, his. Never mind that Fidel's death-like grip on power conjures up another, less poster-friendly definition.
El imperialismo jamás ha regalado nada a nadie.
He's been in power longer than any other leader on the planet. Since seizing power in 1959, Fidel has watched 9 U.S. presidents come and go. The CIA has tried to assassinate him, using everything from secretly trained soldiers during the Bay of Pigs debacle to exploding cigars, all to no avail. Fidel is so feared that ordinary Cubans don't even whisper his name in public. They merely scratch their chins and refer to him as La Barba, the beard. If you are Cuban, Fidel is watching your every move. He has spy agencies in every neighborhood. They're called Committees for the Defense of the Revolution, and they're a big reason he's still running the show. If Fidel sees you as a threat, you are made into an example, as was the case when 3 Cubans hijacked a ferry and bolted for Florida in 2003. They ran out of gas and were apprehended by the Cuban Coast Guard. Just 1 week later, Fidel had them executed by firing squad. Had Fidel been born 50 years later, he might have used hip-hop as a means to power, which may explain why he sees it as such a threat. His speeches read like rap lyrics, and they apply as much to today's rappers as they did to his own rebels back in 1959. Now, the original rebel is an old man. Fidel is 80 and showing signs of his mortality, as the world witnessed at a televised speech in 2004 when he fell and broke his knee and his arm. You won't hear it on the streets, but the question on every Cuban's mind is, what happens to Cuba when Fidel dies? In 2006, reports began circulating that Fidel is dying of stomach cancer. For the first time ever, he temporarily handed power to his younger brother, Raul. When death finally arrives, will life continue relatively unchanged with Raul at the helm? Will angry exiles from Miami storm the island to recover lost property? Will the U.S. back another military invasion? Will Fidel's death go unreported, as his comrades prop him up like the dead guy in the movie Weekend at Bernie's? Will the U.S. drop its embargo, transforming Havana, like in the 1950s, to the Las Vegas of the Caribbean? And what will it all mean for Cuba's rappers? There's only one person who might know for sure, and he's all but disappeared from the public eye. Meet Alexander Guerrilla, one of the leaders of the Cuban hip-hop underground. He produces beats and songs out of an apartment the size of a college dorm room. Like most Cuban rappers, Alexander has a day job. In his case, at this Havana store. Enterprising habaneros peddle their goods and services here. Guys like Alexander sell everything from key duplication to beauty products and manicures, even old records dating back to the days of Batista.
This is my work.
Alexander sells mostly pots and pans. He works on commission, so if he hustles, he can pocket as much as $15 a day, which is good money in Cuba. Back at his apartment, Alexander talks about the harsh realities of Cuba's hip-hop economics.
Es muy duro, ¿entiendes? Muy duro. Mira, yo le hago música a mucha gente aquí. Muchísimos raperos, muchísimos. Y lo más que yo cobro por una música son $10. ¿Entiendes? Y ya han llegado aquí raperos que me han dicho, tengo 5 pesos. Y le he dicho, siéntate. ¿Entiendes? Porque mi objetivo no es cobrarte los $10. ¿Qué te hago con cobrarte los $10? Es educarte a que tú tienes que dar algo a cambio de algo, porque la música vale. ¿Entiendes? Que Estados Unidos, un background que a lo mejor yo haga aquí, a lo mejor le puede gustar a cualquier cantante que esté, vamos a suponer, en alza, a 50 Cent, y un background, lo mínimo que cuesta en Estados Unidos son $500. Lo mínimo. Eso se sabe porque yo leo. Lo mínimo, $500. ¿Y qué yo te estoy enseñando? Acostúmbrate a dar algo a cambio de algo, ¿entiendes? Pero yo he hecho mucha música aquí gratis. A muchos raperos se la he hecho gratis, le he hecho grabaciones gratis, para que le han hecho falta y le he dicho, ven, vamos a grabar. Si a mí no me cuesta ningún trabajo meterme 2 horas, 3 horas y grabando el tema. Y después, pero ese intercambio crea una relación entre los raperos, ¿entiendes?
As U.S. hip-hop lyrics obsessed with sex, guns, and money slide into irrelevance, Alexander chooses more socially aware topics, like the plight of Cuban rafters, people who risk drowning in shark attacks for a shot at life in the United States.
Gente que creía que buscaban libertad y lo que encontraron fue la muerte en alta mar. Decisiones trágicas, la de los balseros que pusieron fin a sus vidas sin obtener sus anhelos. Muchos murieron en el mar, otros perecieron en la boca de algún animal. Familias enteras fueron devoradas. La noticia que corría no era la buscada. Niños que murieron por culpa de sus padres y el caimán sufriendo tales desastres.
Es muy injusto que a la luz pública salga. Sí, el movimiento de rap cubano muy bueno, muy bueno, muy bueno. Y cuando ven, lo que están cantando son con background de 50 Cent, Dr. Dre, Eminem, esto no. Entonces van a decir, bueno, pero ¿qué están haciendo? Si no tienen nada, lo que tienen es la música de nosotros. Sí, letra. No, tenemos letra y música de nosotros. ¿Entiendes? Con nuestra onda cubanesca, con tumbadora, con esto, tenemos lo que tenemos que tener, ¿entiendes? Tenemos letra, música, tenemos máquinas no sofisticadas, pero tenemos maquinitas. Que con esas maquinitas, a lo mejor yo llego a Estados Unidos, ¿entiendes? Te voy a poner un ejemplo, y me ponen una máquina más sofisticada que esta, con todas las herramientas que tiene Dr. Dre, y yo me siento ahí. A lo mejor Dr. Dre, no quiero decir que sea malo, Dr. Dre para mí es uno de los mejores productores que hay en Estados Unidos, ¿entiendes? Pero a lo mejor me ponen lo mismo que tiene Dr. Dre aquí en mi cuartico, y hay que ver qué yo hago con las máquinas de Dr. Dre, ¿entiendes? Hay que comparar quién hace mejor cosa, el que hace con poco o el que hace con mucho.
Y nuevos generales, tenemos tiempo para destruir a nuestros rivales. Nada es tan importante como sentir un cubano afro-cubano. Más tarde o más temprano vendrán a darnos las manos. Aquellos plebeyos que viven de esto y de aquello no se han dado cuenta que mi Cuba tiene un sello. Arte, mate, Habana, Zion, underground, partimos el bate.
Y al mismo tiempo soy un gallo aquí en la valla con escuela. Está bueno ya de muela, que hoy no me frenan los que dicen ser maestro de esta escuela. Si he demostrado ser un buen alumno, agarra que llegó mi turno. Cubano soy igual que tú, mi clave suena bien. Desde la cuna Cuba represent. Hoy saco más de 100 en el colegio del Habana Sai, junto a los míos en el 99. Hoy demostrando mi cubanía y haciendo realidad lo que quería. Listen to mi salvaje melodía que he realizado yo en este día. Pa' que tú veas, esta es mi clase y mi tarea. Yo lo demuestro aquí en la escena como suena. Tengo talento suficiente para ponerla más que buena.
Ladrones, matarfacones, yo, jodí que se jodan los que...
As tough-talking rappers like Alexander and Explosión Suprema, shown here, push the boundaries and struggle just to be heard, there's one group in Cuba that has the enthusiastic blessing of Fidel. These high-flying rebels go by the name Cubans on the net. Their leader looks like that big friendly dude from the movie The Green Mile, and he's just about as menacing. They travel freely outside the country, and even have a professional video camera and private recording studio, complete with video editing software and a DVD burner, so they can post their music videos on the internet, hence their name, Cubans on the Net. They live in nice houses, wear the latest street gear, and work with the hottest girls on the island. Why do they enjoy such privilege? They sing nothing but Fidel-friendly songs approved by his government. Foreign journalists even refer to them as the Communist Party hip-hop group.
Bueno, acabamos de hacer el último tema que grabamos. Se llama Madre de Agua y se lo dedicamos a una planta de tratamiento por sistemas naturales que se ha hecho en Palatino, que están haciendo. O sea, estamos hablando en lenguaje técnico ahí, ecosistémicos, reactores como tales. Y a los raperos les parece que es underground.
¿Ah?
Y a los raperos les parece que es underground. Hasta eso, una salud o una vida segura, ¿no? En los temas, no solo lo decimos, sino que lo graficamos. Hay temas como ese, si se ponen a ver los videos, que nosotros promovemos incluso el uso de condones, ¿no? Eso lo hemos hecho en casi todos los últimos 3 videos. Incluso ahora le estamos haciendo un video a otro grupo que en su letra ellos hacían una sugerencia, o sea, hagamos el amor con la ropa.
By U.S. standards, their videos wouldn't get past the MTV mailroom. Yet Cubans on the Net stand as perhaps Cuba's most visible rap group.
Para el año que viene estamos invitados a México, a Francia, a Alemania, simplemente a cantar los temas ecologistas porque esa gente dice que eso hace falta en sus países también, o sea, que vean que hay gente aquí.
Their non-threatening rhymes get them everything except respect on the street. While Cubans on the Net enjoy the fruits of Castro, Papa Umbertico picks up the rotten pieces and throws them at Fidel's passing black Mercedes.
Los mismos que me obligan a hablar son los mismos que después quieren hacerme callar. Estúpidas reuniones, pérdida de tiempo y los problemas no se acaban de solucionar. ¿De qué me vas a hablar tú? Prefiero seguir pasando trabajo. Métete toda esta jodienda comercial por donde mejor te quepa y vete al carajo. Desde abajo miro el movimiento de nuestro movimiento y río. Se habla de unidad como se habla de unidad, pero los primeros que hablan son los primeros que ya tienen lo suyo creado. Es tanta la hipocresía que existe entre nosotros mismos, quemando la mierda a la unidad. En nadie confío, lucho primero por lo mío y después si acaso le tiro un cabo al otro. Tú eres tú y yo soy yo, Penco. No somos nosotros, ¿ok? Hip hop on the ground. Siéntelo. Yo. Buena señor estafa, ¿cómo está usted? Andaba en trámites de negocios que hace tanto que no se le ve. ¿Sabe? Hace poco me pregunté por mi dinero, sí. Aquel dinero, recuerda, estará en mejores manos que las mías. ¿Qué más da? Bueno, hasta la vista señor estafa y recuerde, estoy disponible para un próximo proyecto, aunque traten a uno como a una mierda. No pierdas más tu tiempo, compadre, tú no naciste para esto. Sigue como espectador, es realmente malo ese texto. Protesto yo con base, no soy de esos que lo hacen sin saber por qué. Sus canciones se quedan a medias, las escucho y siento que les falta algo. Y ese algo sentimiento se llama. Y una gran parte del público de fiesta aplaudiendo sandeces con tremendas ganas. Lo real a la cubana, papá Umbertico.
Like Anónimo Consejo, Papa Umbertico learned a hard lesson about criticizing Fidel's police for harassing black Cubans. At the festival 2 years ago, he rapped, "Police, police, you are not my friend. For Cuban youth, you are the worst nightmare. You are the criminal. I detest you." Behind him, 2 young Cubans unfurled a banner that read Social Denunciation. It was a rare, direct criticism of Fidel's brand of socialism. Police confronted Umbertico and banned him from performing for 4 months. I drive to the small village outside Havana where he lives with his mother, hoping to hear more about the incident. When I arrive, Umbertico shows me how he makes the music underneath his rhymes. He's assembled a jalopy of a computer by scrounging for all the parts. Over the years, he's purchased all kinds of records, which he samples and puts in his computer.
Hay tiendas por ahí que lo venden a 10 pesos, 15 pesos, no sé.
Cimarrón.
Then he creates computerized beats to form his signature sound.
Seguro estoy de mí, me escaparé. Todo lo tengo bien pensado, claro que lo lograré. Me iré, atrás quedarán cepos, látigos y grilletes para siempre. Seré libre como antes, libre e independiente. No me preocupan perros ansiosos por encajarme sus dientes, ni ranchadores furiosos no darán conmigo. Hablo con el monte, conozco sus secretos, el monte es mi amigo. Sigo mi rumbo manigo adentro, busco ese majestuoso palenque donde de seguro me esperan. Allí, hermanos que esclavos al igual que yo eran.
No sé, aquí en el barrio no hay casi cultura de hip hop. El único que ve hip hop aquí en el barrio soy yo y 2 o 3 amigos más. La gente ignora aquí que el real significado de la cultura hip hop. Y para mí es muy difícil eso, es muy difícil.
No me matarán joven encerrado, en libertad de viejo voy a morirme.
Y me parece que no hay nadie adelante, no sé, que no tengo a nadie adelante. Y canto como si estuviera yo solo, no sé.
Soy aquel que rompió grilletes con sus propias manos. Realmente no de acuerdo con la situación.
No hago la música por muchachas ni por dinero. La hago por mí. Sí, por mí, hago lo que me gusta hacer, no lo que hacer algo que no me gusta por algo. Hago lo que me gusta hacer, pase con eso lo que pase.
I asked Umbertico about what happened with the police back in 2002.
Sí, bueno, no pasó nada. Estuve 4 meses sancionado, sin cantar en ninguna parte y ya. Más nada.
I noticed something on the wall behind him. It's an internet report about the protest, something he's clearly proud of, even though he won't talk about it. The headline reads, Cuban Rap Festival starts with irreverent tones. The interview is over. Umbertico is more concerned with moving forward than looking back.
Yo, contra su voluntad y sin saber nada viene al mundo el hombre. Contra su voluntad y sin saber nada es dotado de un nombre. El hombre sale de la nada sin por qué entender. Sobre el porqué de su existencia solo idioteces obtiene él. A permanecer en una prisión es condenado. La vida, hasta que la muerte de esta también contra su voluntad le dé salida. El hombre de esto se olvida y en otras cosas piensa. El hombre con sus virtudes y defectos a imponerse comienza. Inmensa es la capacidad que posee para razonar. Aunque a veces demuestre lo contrario, no deja de ser un ser único, excepcional. Amar, no sabe muy bien lo que es. Una vaga idea de esto navega en su mente, pero a cambio sí conoce bien el interés. La madurez completa tarda en conseguir. Con la misma piedra el choque suele repetir y repetir. No dejo de decir a pesar de todo que el hombre es una gran potencia. Del reino animal no cabe dudas, es la eminencia. A diferencia de los demás seres vivos, lo puede todo este. Trata de alcanzar su sueño siempre, cueste lo que cueste. Este, de cada época no es más que un racional instrumento. Este jamás ha dejado de ser un racional instrumento. Lento fue su desarrollo hasta la actualidad. Acerca de su origen aún tengo mis dudas, esa es la realidad. Sin libertad el hombre no es hombre del todo. Si el hombre no es libre tiene que tratar de serlo de algún modo. Si el hombre no es libre tiene que tratar de serlo de algún modo.
Papa Umbertico, Anónimo Consejo, Las Crudas, Alexander. These musicians are risking their lives to be heard. Their future hangs on the fate of one tenacious old man, and how much longer he dodges death. Remember these faces. They might be thrown in prison, killed by firing squad, relegated to a life of obscurity on the streets of Havana, or they might ignite a new Cuban revolution.
Primer paso, decir la verdad, nunca lo falso. Aunque te cosan la boca, aunque te arranquen a pedazos.
Segundo paso, buen trastazo, pa' tu oído raso. Mi objetivo, amigo, no es ser mejor que tú. Ser humilde es mi virtud, como Cristo Jesús. A todos ofrezco luz.
Tercero, nuestra amistad vale más que el dinero. En el cuarto quiero saludar a la señora luchadora, acogedora, madre protectora. Juntos vemos como el tiempo nos devora.
Llega y pega el quinto a buena hora. El sagrado micrófono funciona. Gracias a Dios, quien me dio la voz para mostrar la voz. Lo que hacen dos hermanos preparados, contando lo que nadie ha contado.
Aquí no hay miedo.
Anónimo Consejo.
Al carajo el flojito. El sexto mantiene el grito. Morir por tu tierra es vivir con los mortales penquitos.
Tú sabes.
5-5 de mi mente pa' tu mente.
6-6 en defensa de mi gente. Yo.
Desmandamiento en la sagrada escritura.
El verdadero hip hop es nuestra cultura.
5-5 de mi mente pa' tu mente.
6-6 en defensa de mi gente. Yo.